MBA hopefuls, we are on air with MBA Waves, your weekly vidcast talking all things business and education, streaming live every Tuesday on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, bringing you tons of tips to help you into a top ranked MBA program and getting you up and close and personal with many of the schools that we host on the show, where you can get all your questions answered. And if you like this week's episode, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Today, on episode number 93, yes, we are just 7 episodes short of the 100. We're talking about the latest trends in GRE. We're going to dive into the structure of GRE, GRE 2023, everything you need to know, and of course, how to prep for a killer GRE score. As always, I'm your host, Krithika Srinivasan, co founder of Career Labs, and joined by my co host, Bara Sapir, director of City Test Prep and Mindflow. How are you doing today, Bara?
I'm doing great. You would think that we were in some on a ship at sea though. We've got this crazy weather happening, an atmospheric sea, I think they're calling it, a river or something. It's really bizarre weather right now. So hopefully I won't sail away during this.
Yeah, I hope you stay afloat for the rest of the episode.
I hope so.
So, Bara, could you introduce and extend a warm welcome to our special guest today?
I'd be happy to. I'm so excited to have folks from ETS and the GRE folks, Jay, Brian, and MT, Mary Teresa. Jay and MT, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'll go first. Hi, I'm Jay, coming at you from Dallas, Texas. We are not in this atmospheric river you speak of, but I did actually get in the pool this weekend, so that was nice. But it's going to be in the 30s this coming weekend, so that's our Texas for you there. Glad to be joining everybody and be here with you today. I've spent better part of the last 2 decades in MBA admissions, working at a couple different schools, and I've been here at ETS for coming up on 3.5 years now. So there we go. MT.
Great to have you.
Hi, and I am Mary Teresa Taglang, and I am also with ETS, even though I didn't fill out my name properly. But I, like Jay, have spent probably more than 20 years in the graduate management education space. I was in industry before I came to education and just love the combination. I'm in Pennsylvania, and I'm not in the atmospheric stream. I'm just in high winds of March. So I don't know who's going to blow away first, either Bara or me, but we'll see. So thanks for having both of us here. I'm really excited about this new opportunity.
Yeah, we're really excited to have both of you. Thanks for joining us.
So just to dive in directly and hoping that no one flies away, but the only thing that gets blown away today is the minds of our listeners. So I have to say that I'm a fan of standardized tests. Yeah, there I said it. I know that, the combined, I was just thinking, the combined experience of all of us is definitely over like half a century worth of information for graduate management education. But yes, I am a fan of standardized tests because I found it's to be the most effective way to compare people from different backgrounds and academic records. So according to you, what is the purpose of GRE in the graduate school application process?
Well, I like always how Jay answers this question because he refers to a thermometer. So I'm going to defer to Jay on that and let him give you his explanation.
Sure. Well, one of the things when you're applying to business school, which is different than other graduate majors, like let's say you're looking to go into a graduate degree in engineering, you probably have an undergraduate degree in that or science, etc. But when you're applying to business programs, the students are coming from all sorts of backgrounds, and that's actually what we like. Myself, I do have my MBA. I was kind of scared when I was applying because I have my undergraduate in education and Spanish literature. And there I was applying to go to an MBA program. And I'll be honest, I didn't even know what accounting and marketing and finance really was, except I had heard the words. by taking a standardized test, I was able to show, hey, I can actually do math, as well as, if not better than, my classmates. And that's really what in admissions, we're looking at. Are you able to prove through that you're going to be able to keep up with the work that we throw at you? It is a thermometer, very much. You may not. I go outside here in Dallas, Texas in August. I do not like what the thermometer says. It often says 110 degrees, and then I look over and see it's also very humid. I don't like that, but it is reality. It is going in and understanding where it's at, how I'm going to deal with that. I know, meanwhile, MT being up in Pennsylvania may not like when it's below freezing, but she knows to grab a jacket. She knows what to do. It's kind of the same thing for the schools. We are able to say, you may need a little more math training. You may need to work on your writing skills. You may need to do whatever it is to fit in here. And that may be something we tell you to go do on your own. And maybe, hey, try applying next year, which is never what you want to hear, but there it is. Or the school may want to do some remediation work with some students. So,
and it's what the thermometer is telling us. It's not that the person is necessarily bad or wrong or whatever. It's just that the thermometer is indicating this is where you may need to shore up a little bit. And that goes across populations, it goes across gender. And that's why it's such a standardized test is such a good tool to use. It's objective. And we don't yell at the thermometer because it's hot outside, just like we don't yell at the test. So we like to use and promote the use of that product just so we can get a better idea of, where the strengths and the shoring up needs to happen.
Well, I do have students that yell at the test. I do. I have to admit, the GRE was actually the first test that I taught through one of the big test prep companies. So I have a long lasting relationship with this test, and I've seen the changes that it's undergone. But yelling does happen. And it happens at other tests too. So don't, it's not just the GRE, it's definitely other tests, especially the MCAT, but we won't get into that. So I'm curious, you both introduced yourselves, but can you get into the weeds a little bit more about what you do at ETS so that our viewers can understand the positioning that you have?
Sure. Should I jump into that?
Sure.
That's okay. I joined ETS about just a little over 2 years ago, and that was after I had been in various roles in graduate management education at Lehigh University, and I was director of admissions and recruitment, director of graduate programs, director of the MS and management program, and so I brought a wide and varied knowledge of GME, and at ETS, our roles, Jay's role and my role, are similar in that we work with business schools to help them understand the value of the GRE as well as a number of other products that we offer, because we're bigger than the GRE. We have many other products that business schools use. So we'll advise them on things like how to use our ETS data manager or how to use our GRE search service. So there are just bigger issues that they may need better understanding. One of them is a tool that Jay developed called the GRE Fluencies to help their staffs themselves understand, like today, exactly what the GRE is looking for, what it does, how prospective students and test takers interact with it. So, and we also deal with outside organizations like AACSB and smaller regional conferences where we develop relationships with deans, program directors, and so forth.
That's really helpful. Jay, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about what we're talking about with the GRE Fluencies. We do a lot of these with schools when I first joined at ETS, the GRE had been accepted, I'd say started about 2010. There was kind of a trend in the industry that one by one, business schools were starting to accept it as, in addition to the GMAT, as a test for admissions. But there was, I would say, we would accept it, but not necessarily get to know the test real well. So when I knew this was true of myself and the staff that I worked with. Someone said, "Well, which should I take? What are the differences?" It was very surface level what we were able to speak about. We maybe knew the scores were different, but we even used a converter back in those days, which we've removed that standalone as the GRE test itself. Now we have gone around to these schools and made sure that they understand what's on the test, how to talk about it. You hear sometimes, oh, the GRE is an easier test. No, it's not. It's a different test. You may like the type questions on it better, but that doesn't mean your score at the end of the day is going to be any more helpful or hurtful for you because of that. And that's what we're getting out to make sure schools are able to speak in depth about that. So when you call an admissions office, they know what to talk about.
That's great. It's also great for our viewers to know some of the behind the scenes things that are happening. Like TOEFL. TOEFL is another exam that ETS is part of, and this fluency I think is super important and valuable for because it's not just a frontal relationship. It's not just the test, the school. Like you actually are in this kind of dialogue ongoing, so that they understand better who the students are, how they're performing. And I think that's super valuable. So, just diving into the test now, there's the 3 sections, and starting with the verbal reasoning. How is it designed to evaluate a student's actual language skills, especially because your sister test, the TOEFL, right, is part of your portfolio?
Sure, I'll start with that one. A lot of what is in that verbal section is reading authentic passages actually anything that you would read in those passages on the GRE is coming from something that was actually published, something that was out there and is at the reading level of the material you'd come across in graduate study. You don't want to wind up, you're going to be doing a lot of reading when you get to business school. It is not,
I know about this.
it is not just, math problems in finance or figuring out your accounting. No, you're going to be doing a lot of case study work, and you're going to be evaluating that sort of information. So, you've been, most people have been doing this for a long time. What is the main idea here? Which sentences or which phrases below most support the idea? That's what you need, and able to have the sort of level of discourse that you have in a business school class that is looking at a case study. Evaluating the decisions made by a company. You're looking at the opinions. What are opinions? What are facts? They seem things we've been learning forever, but at that graduate level, and it takes a lot of deep thought. So it is not just vocabulary. I hear those not in the know, if you will, think that the GRE verbal section is just a bunch of similes and vocabulary words, stuff like that. No, it's actually understanding that level of reading. Now, there are some sections as well where you are going to, fill in the blanks and paragraphs with a bank of words that you're given. And yeah, that's maybe a little more vocabulary centric, but you have to understand context and mood and all of the other things of the paragraph to be able to choose the correct words. And it's that finesse in there that makes you a great participant in your business school classes. It's more than just vocabulary. I assure you. You got to know a lot of vocabulary. I'm not going to lie. There are big words in there, but it's a lot more than that.
One of the things that I always find pretty interesting and actually pretty difficult for me is that the reading comprehension part. I comprehend really well, but it's always tempting for me to bring in my own thoughts and opinions from my life experiences when I look at a reading comprehension question. And so remembering to be really focused and looking at the text and ensuring that you're answering the question from the information that's given in that text is really important. This is not about your outside idea that says, oh, that's not really how it works. It is, what facts am I presented with, and how do I get an answer and comprehend from these facts, not from my life experience. So that's something that is important to keep in mind, because when you're in business school, again, you have to, it's kind of like being a lawyer, answer the question that's being answered, being asked, and don't stray with, your own opinions or thoughts or editorializing.
I have to admit, I started watching The Last of Us last night, right?
Great show.
And it's amazing. And it's kind of like, you have to make that shift. And I'm making an analogy, which is a section I miss from the GRE, that The Last of Us really feels like the way that you have to approach, like the way that I approach Last of Us. I can't bring in the world as I know it. It's a whole new world. Mm-hmm. And it's slightly skewed, peripheral, or I think that also, like, but the last, it just, anyway, I like the analogies. I miss the analogies. I'm just going to say that. Okay. I was a fan.
Now I have to watch it because I haven't seen it yet.
It's really wonderful, but it's that kind of thing that the reasoning has to take place just in the world that's created, that is a dystopian world that's, this year in the time that they present it. But I think it's super important for people to understand that you can't bring in that outside knowledge, right? Like the world that exists and everything is related and everything's built up. And the reasoning, the thinking that you were talking about, Jay, has to happen in there. So, words are great.
Yeah, I'll also add in, one of the things that we do here at ETS, every single question that goes onto the GRE is reviewed and tested, and thousands of folks have attempted this question on the research section of the test. And the example I throw out, there's bias for this or bias for that. So like in a reading selection, one of the things that I throw out, I grew up in Texas. I moved back here from California about a year and a half ago. If I were to get a reading section that was all about the tides and the moon phases, as a Texan, I'd have to read that paragraph 2 or 3 times just to understand what they're talking about. So there would be this bias there, but they would catch that. Once I moved to California, and I like to go to the beach and take my dog to the dog beach and whatnot, I got to know when low tide, high tide, what that meant for me, the tide pools, where we could go, what were the best place to go to, because that became part of my life. And now if I read a paragraph on that, I'd probably have a much better understanding. It's those sorts of things. We all have different backgrounds in our lives. And those are the type things that they're able to catch by doing research and testing every question that goes out there, that there's not bias against me because I didn't go up near the beach and someone who did. So we do a lot of testing like that on every single question that's in there.
And we should probably add that within each GRE test, there is a section that is specifically for research. It's not always identified as a research section, but it is an opportunity for us to test in the real population and test takers aren't scored on it. So it's just an opportunity for us to test out those questions and see how well they work, where we need to tweak, how we need to understand what we're putting out better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had to say that, when I used to be a GRE tutor, that was one of my first part-time jobs that I did. And then, of course, like I took the GRE myself, and I used to wonder, I don't want to get 2 math. I don't want to get 2 math sections. I don't want to get 2 math sessions. And guess what? I did get 2 math sessions. And I don't know like which one was it, but I have to say that I did get like a full score. So I was pretty happy about it. But yeah, that research section is something, and obviously you don't want to tell them, because there is the bias there. So
right.
Yeah, super interesting. How about we dive into the quant section and talk about what kind of quant skills are assessed on the GRE?
Sure. Do you want to take it, MT? You want me to take it?
Well, I'll go high level on this because Jay is he's better at quants than I am, because he has that language thing that I didn't have. But the quant section, everybody, I think, gets really confused about the kinds of questions and topics that are asked about. And the one thing that we always refer to in our fluencies is the fact that there is no trigonometry on the GRE. That everybody thinks there's trig, and there isn't. There are sections, just like on the verbal, with two quantitative sections. There are 20 questions each on it, and there's information in there that ranges from maybe high school level algebra and geometry to again, comprehensive questions and calculation questions, and there's a calculator available. So what we really want to know on that is how you can understand, interpret, and analyze that quantitative information. As an MBA student, you'll have to do that in those financial classes. But this is a way for us to gauge at what level you have experience at. You'll find other things as well, like basic arithmetic, where you have arithmetic operations, you'll have decimal representation. This is not necessarily rocket science. It's things that you probably haven't used in quite a long time, but there are lots of test preparation materials available so that you can remind yourself of how to do fractions or how to do decimals.
Well, you MT just mentioned this is not rocket science, but I always laugh because rocket scientists take the GRE to get into grad programs. So it is rocket science to some extent. But yeah, not only trigonometry, but calculus does not make an appearance on the GRE. Also, there is statistics, but it's much more descriptive sort of statistics, understanding what you're looking at, graphs, charts, numbers, whatever. But it's none of the inferential statistics. So you're not making predictions and things like that. I guarantee in your MBA, you're going to come across that you're going to have to learn to make predictions, because we all, man, I can't think of a week that's gone by in any job I've had post MBA that we didn't have to predict what was going to happen in what we're doing. So that's definitely a part of what you're going to learn, but it's not on the GRE itself. One other thing I'll throw out there, and a big reason you should spend some time preparing, you just need to know that the way the questions are asked, don't let that be a hurdle that you're dealing with while you're taking the test. You need to know these are the type questions we got, because there's your old-fashioned multiple choice, one answer. Not that the questions are easy, but you know how to do those questions. But we also throw at you numeric entry, where you're going to have to actually type in the answer is 1,327. You got to type that in. But there's also, we throw this at you, multiple choice that could have more than one answer. And an example of that, if I showed something came out to the answer with absolute value of 2, it might be 2 and -2, and you got to make sure you fill in both of those bubbles, or you got that question wrong. And that's not necessarily obvious that the instructions are there, but don't waste those valuable seconds trying to figure out, really, there could be 2 answers. And then there's also what we call quantitative comparison, where the choices are pretty much going to be the same every time. The value of quantity A is larger, the quantity of value B is larger, they're equal, or I simply just don't know. I don't have enough information here to figure out which is greater or less than. So you don't want to wind up sitting down for the test and have no idea, because I remember the first time I was looking at that. In fact, the other day when I was just reviewing for this, I was like, I really need to make sure I understand what each of these are. And anyone who doesn't take that time to prepare and understand those questions is really hurting themselves.
Yeah, we always tell students that before they go in, that the instructions and the format is not going to change. so that they need to know that quantitative comparison like it's a love language, right? Like, so that they really understand how each one works through. And it's really, I think, really indicative of how you need to think as a business school student, right? So I feel like, especially that section, it's the kind of reasoning so that you can understand the relationships that happen. And that reasoning is really what I would imagine that business schools are looking at more than they're looking at, do you know how to add fractions, right? They really want to know, how do you reason? And some questions, like, you can really figure out quickly because there's, I don't want to say a hack or a trick, but like understanding and seeing it quickly. And then other ones you actually have to get into the weeds. So I think that I mean, it's just another beauty of standardized tests, is knowing when to dive into things and knowing when you can answer in a more superficial way and still get it correct. So
Absolutely.
And I think, like, this preparedness is what separates the chaff from the rest, as you say. Or the reason for that is because you want to be academically ready, and you don't want to be like thinking about, hey, is 4.5 less than this, whatever is the other thing, other quantity, right? Because when you're in business school, you want to be able to apply and then say, hey, you know what, based on this, I'm going to take this decision, or probably sell this thing off, or maybe, like, shelve this startup or whatever, in terms of that.
And
So
I
mhm.
want to add one thing there. Probably the worst thing you can say to someone in admissions. And by the way, most admissions people will talk back and forth with you before you apply. I mean, there's certainly the top tier schools that may just not have the capability to reply to everyone. But I have had so many folks say to me, the reason my score, my GMAT or GRE in this case, score wasn't as high as it should be, is because I just didn't have time to study and prepare for it. What you are saying to me, the translation that comes to me as an admissions person is, I just didn't take the time to do it. I didn't think I needed to. And by the way, when I'm in your program, I probably won't do all my homework. That's what you're
Good.
saying to me.
That is so on target. And so if the converse of that is, if you have someone who has taken the time to prepare and has done everything that they need to do in order to secure their target score, then you have someone who has some discipline, who has some seriousness about the next step in their education that they're planning to take, and subsequently their next career move. Because that tells a whole story about how willing you are to prepare, be disciplined, be rigorous, and it's a huge benefit to be able to put that forward to your business school.
I always tell people, like, however you do your whole application is just a reflection of how you do life, right? And so exactly what you're both talking about, that if you're gonna tell the AdCom this, you're giving them a lot more information than you probably want to be, because they get it. They understand that this is how you're going to approach it. Similarly, if you take a test many, many times but don't do anything to change your score, but you're just doing it many times, they're going to see that too. But if you take it twice, 3 times, and each time you're progressing, they're going to see that as well. Yeah. So it's really like the way we do some things is the way we do all things. And you want to think about who you want to be in life, but also in this process, because I feel like it does reflect.
It absolutely does. Yeah, there's no question about that. No question.
So yeah, I think you guys clarified how important GRE is for letting somebody know that you're academically ready for the program. So I want to dive into the last section that we have, and this is my favorite section because it involves writing. So, what do you think is being measured in the analytical writing section?
I think it's all our favorite sections. We all talk about how important the quant section is to show that you have the skills necessary to succeed in the quantitative classes, and that's great. But what we really want to do in business school is prepare you for your next role, your career. And that ability to communicate in writing is crucial. Can you write a proper email? Can you be succinct in what you're saying? Can you put together grammatically correct white papers? All of those things are really important. And the fact that the essays on the GRE give you an opportunity to present yourself without any editing from someone else, without ChatGPT, without a ghostwriter. That's really, really crucial. And schools read these essays, and I should tell you, and I think Jay will tell you the same thing. When I was reading applications, I always read the essay because I knew that there was no way that somebody else could write that essay, and it was pure unadulterated work. And it tells us some things. First, you can get someone who has a great application, a beautiful essay, and then the analytical writing section is not so great. Now that's telling us, giving us some hints about, well, they probably had some help, and who wouldn't really? But when you're looking at it from the point of an international student, then I really want to see, and I think we all do, just how we can let me just back up and say, we can see that beautiful essay from an international student because we know somebody else looked at it. But then we can see perhaps a not so beautiful essay and maybe not wonder too much because now they're being authentic in that writing. And that's good. I mean, we like to see that authentic piece of it. So that is, to me, why that analytical writing piece is so important.
Yeah, I would add to that. It's first a little insider tip in case some of the viewers out there aren't aware. Every potential essay topic is available on the ETS website. There's a couple hundred of them, so good luck, memorizing every essay you're going to write. But do know that the pool of questions are out there. So if you want, absolutely take the time to look through those. But also, this is very similar to what MT was saying. Out of your entire application, this is the only thing that truly the applicant produced. The resume, we advise you to have someone look at it. The essay, I have seen what look like a literary genius essay in the application turn around with a 2 on their essay writing on the GRE. And it's like, oh, but why is this important to us? International students also take the TOEFL as a foreign. I used to teach Spanish before, so to me, language is very important, and writing is a major component of that. Whether you be a native speaker or international, but on the TOEFL, you get to speak and write. And those production skills to me were incredibly important because you're going to be speaking to people when you're representing our school. You're going to be, at the different visitors we have to campus, to your fellow students, to your faculty, and at the end of the day, perhaps maybe even the most important, the employers at the end of it. And that writing sample, I know there's some schools out there who say, we kind of look at it, we kind of don't. But there's a lot of schools that do read everything. I didn't necessarily read the essays, but I would always check that score because I had faith that ETS was given a score that was appropriate for it. But these students, people watching this webinar right now, you are going to be writing to future employers, to alums, to help you in your search. And my goodness, the last thing I want is for someone to not be able to create full sentences or use bad grammar. On the recruitment end, for sure, I got emails that sounded like they were text messaging me, and trust me, we took note of that.
No
But
emojis, no emojis in your
no,
resume.
I'll do a smiley face now and again. I'll admit, I'm a fan of the smiley face. But at the end of the day, you want to show that you can write, produce language, express yourself at a level that's appropriate for business school, and that's super important because at the end of the day, you want to get a job. And I know one of the places I worked was Thunderbird School of Global Management, now part of Arizona State, and working very closely with our career department. They were very clear to us, like the first thing that employers recognize is their ability to use the English language, and that includes native speakers. You need to write like a professional, and this is the only time that you can prove that in your application.
Yeah, I would definitely, I just want to highlight that the whole test really is the most raw, authentic Polaroid, for those of you who know what a Polaroid is, photograph of your performance, because everything else you can take time, from your resume to your grades, like that all is more time bound than the actual test. And so, coming in, a school is going to get a sense of what your readiness is and how much they're going to want to invest in you to get you up to speed. And for you, do you have the grit to actually get up to whatever speed that you need to get up to? So, I'm a big fan too. Like, I think I think they make a lot of sense because really they are the only authentic piece of your whole application package. Everything else can actually be, manufactured, massaged, kind of like fixed, and even perspective, right? Like you can create in your resume a perspective of what you did. Like some of the job titles are super interesting, right? Of things that people have done. So I'm a big fan. So how about jumping over to subject tests, right? In the past few years, we've seen an increase of MBA aspirants taking the GRE, but is there specifically any conversation about specifically having a GRE business school specific test at all? Or has just the way that it is now, the umbrella of it is working?
The GRE test, the generalized knowledge that's required for business school.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're always, like I said, we're bigger than the GRE. So we're always talking about ways that we can improve or offer, other kinds of assessments that would help. And we have some other assessments in the works. Can't really talk about all of them right now, but
we won't tell anyone.
It's a secret. It's a secret. But right now, business schools are looking at just and we are just the GRE general test for their admissions.
I think with the subject test, for the most part, like again, there's subject tests in biology, for example, and the biology programs want to make sure you know a baseline of biology. Again, with business, the students are coming from everywhere. My experience as a high school AP Spanish teacher does not line up with someone who worked for a consulting firm right out of undergraduate. What questions could you possibly ask both of us that are going to standardize anything? It's not fair because I don't know business and they may have never taken any sort of leadership role, which when you're a teacher, by the way, you are leading 30 people at a time. Get teenagers to do what you want. That's tough management. But the point is, I don't foresee a subject test for admissions ever becoming something because the wide variety. At the schools I worked in, business majors from undergrad was 30% or less of our student body. That changes from school to school, but it's definitely in there. Now, what I will tell you, we work with something called the Major Field Test, MFT for short. And some schools will give that right when you start just to get hey, where is our class? What do they know? What do they not know? But more often than not, it's actually given at the end of the program to make sure that they got across what they were trying to teach you in the first place. So there is kind of a subject test, but it's more of a end of program test that some programs will use from here at ETS. But for admissions, I don't see that becoming a thing.
That's super interesting. I didn't know about
Yeah.
this. Yes.
So I was thinking more from probably the data literacy that we need, to be in B school. It's at a much higher level than in, say, for example, some other programs that you might be getting into.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so do you think like that needs like additional testing or
Which testing again?
for like checking people on their data literacy and like kind of like amping it up? Um, Especially the number driven and other integrated reasoning that is required.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's what you're doing in business school is learning to solve problems and getting experience from the way that other people solve, which is why we like diversity of backgrounds, of majors, of industries, things like that. Again, one one thing I think that MT, when we were kind of preparing for this, we talked about the expression "it depends." Every school is different. Know the school you're looking at, because they may be very, very hardcore on something that, at my school I wasn't. I mentioned I worked at Thunderbird. I was looking for international experience, global mindset, things like that, which quite frankly, when I moved over to University of California, I was working with engineers and scientists. Completely different things that we were interested in. So know your schools, know what they're looking for. But yeah, some of them are going to be much more data driven. They're going to be much more looking at your quant sections. Some of them may have a reputation more for liberal arts connections, or even there's some that do dual degrees with fine arts and things like that. So you got to know your program. MT, anything to add there?
Well, just to jump back into that, the dual degree pieces. Each different schools have different dual degree offerings and may look for different aspects of not only your scores but also your experiences. For instance, you mentioned Bara, MCAT way back as we first began. A lot of schools are now, or a lot of individuals who want to go to medical school are taking a gap year or two to study something else. So they may have, a different, that individual school may have a different need, and you have to really look at what they want. And that's why research and preparation is so, so important. That prep for the GRE or any test is going to send a message, a really strong message. And we offer so much prep that we should, probably talk about that a little bit.
I think I'd love to talk about it now. Let's talk about let's talk about the prep now. I was going to say that "it depends" is really the unofficial tagline of MBA Waves. It's amazing how much "it depends" comes up in the entire application process. But there aren't as many. There are some options with prep, but the bottom line is you have to prep for these exams. And you have to prep. I always tell our students, because you take a diagnostic test to see where you're starting out. But can you go into a little bit about what materials you do have and what you do advise students to do in order to prep? Like what advice you would give?
Well, I'll start with a relatively new tool that we have here through ETS called the GRE Mentor. Write that name down because it doesn't pop up right when you go to the GRE site. When you register for it, I'm sure you're getting information about it. But the GRE Mentor is basically, it's a computer program. You say, hey, I'm going to take my test on, let's choose Cinco de Mayo on May 5th. And today is Pi Day, March 14th, important day. So it actually figures out, okay, you have this much time, you need to work on this many sections a day, devote this much time per day or per week, whatever, and kind of build a curriculum specific for yourself based on that. And it gives you the scores back and, where you need to keep working, things like that. So that's a really cool tool that just came out this last year.
And now, it's fun. I've played around with it, and it's fun because a lot of the prep is through gaming, and it makes it go really fast. It helps you to determine where you should spend some time. And I think a really nice feature of GRE Mentor is that there's a community in there. So you can, partner up with someone if you don't have someone to kind of hold you accountable. You can, throw questions out like, I didn't understand this question, or can somebody tell me how they arrived at this? So it really, you're not alone. It's always better when you can have somebody who has, or have someone else who's right alongside of you going through that same process.
Mhm.
So it's at $100 right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I will throw out, there's other ways for test prep if you have the time and money. Going through an organized prep is certainly a great thing to do. When I was getting ready for my standardized test to go for my MBA, as I said, I was a high school teacher. I did not have a lot of cash laying around. So I got an old fashioned book back at Barnes and Noble when that was still a big thing, and did all my study that way. But I was also a teacher, so I knew kind of how to plan that out. Um, but we don't specifically say this is the best place to go, that's the best place to go. But what we do say is if you go to our website, there are a lot of practice tests, there are resources. You can do it on your own if you are committed to it. But do something. Don't do nothing.
Yeah, do something.
So,
And we have test prep materials that fit every budget, ranging from no cost to like the GRE Mentor, which is $100. So don't let that be a deterrent to you. If you can't afford a lot, get disciplined and do it. That's an important thing to think about.
so when do you say that someone should use a GRE mentor in the stage of the preparation? Is it at the very beginning, or is it when they're like sufficiently well versed with the rest of the concepts?
Sign up for it the day you sign up for your GRE. And my advice on that, again, this comes from my background in education, teaching towards AP tests. You knew the day of your test. You had a goal. Don't wait and be like, oh, I'm going to take it sometime in May and sign up the week before. Don't do that. Sign up in March for your test date in May, because that is goal oriented. Now you can divide that up. GRE Mentor, the day that I know my test date, it will build a study guide and backwards to today,
Right.
to give me what it is that I need. So the moment that you can, once you know your test date, is the best time to do it.
Does it combine at all with diagnostic tests? Like, can you take a diagnostic test and then your results of that get fed into the GRE Mentor, or no?
There are two of them in there
Yeah,
within it. Yeah,
but they
included.
don't communicate. The GRE Mentor doesn't communicate with your CAT.
I am not sure of that
Yeah, I'm
detail.
not certain of that either.
But the first thing you should do,
Take a
I
test.
think you said this, Bara, was take an entire test.
Yeah, take it.
And I'm not saying, spend an hour here and then go to the gym and then come back. No, it's a full test. Sit down, tell your family, your friends, your dog, whoever, to go away and let you do this. But you need a full experience first, and then you can see where your weaknesses are.
Yeah. Take it in the same environment, that practice test, that you're going to take the real test. And if it's like Jay said, put your dog away, which, we've done, Bara, right? We put our dogs away.
Right here, but
yeah, mine are still around too. But try and really mimic that experience. So if you're doing it in the morning, don't drink too much coffee. Don't drink too much water. Make sure that you are going to be really careful about just mimicking that environment, so you understand how your score could play out.
yeah, I tell people, don't quit smoking if you're a smoker. Don't start smoking if you're not a smoker. Don't break up with your partner. Like, really try to create the most normal conditions. And because you're also talking, if you're taking the test in May and it's March, like, you can reverse engineer and also think about other things like, how are you eating during that time? Like
Exactly.
it's a really good time to start eating nourishing, yummy food. That's good brain food. You know, your salmons, your whole grains, things like that.
Be well rested.
Be well rested. Get into the habit of being well rested,
Yeah.
because if you're not, you know, and also note, like, what has your past performance been when you've taken high stakes tests, right? And so, and prepare for that. Are you anxious? What are you going to do about that, right? It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And so, how do you want to fully prepare for that? Is how I often tell students.
Mhm.
Yeah. So,
So I'm going to bring in something controversial. Not really. The thing is, we know that GMAT has brought in something really huge with the GMAT focus, possibly in 2024, and it's creating a lot of waves in the test, the test space. Are there going to be any changes to the GRE, and what do you guys think about this big sea change for the test? They have literally shelved off like 1 hour from the test, and it's much shorter now. So, yeah, just your comments on that, and of course, what changes to the GRE in the future?
Oh, I'll start by saying hold tight. That's, there's certainly been discussion, and not just starting from them announcing that, and from the beginning of really this is COVID Eve. Also, by the way, 3 years ago tomorrow is the day
Wow.
that the U.S. basically shut down.
Yeah.
That turned our industry upside down, and I'm not talking the assessment industry. I'm talking the entire education industry. Schools went test optional, et cetera, et cetera. A few weeks after that, we started offering the GRE at home, all these sorts of things. We have been talking about and looking at what sort of updates, changes, what do the schools want, what are the candidates willing to take, because, the got to be willing to take the test to go to the school that you want. So it's all in there. I think in the next few months you'll probably hear some updates. Nothing that we can talk about publicly at the moment.
you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Sure. We're sure.
But
Just checking. Just checking.
oh, I wish I could. I will say one thing that surprises me, and I don't know exactly how this will all land from the GRE side, but for the GMAT focus, I'm surprised they have taken away that writing section. I will say, I'll throw that out there. As a former admissions director for about 15 years, again, I did take the time to look at the writing sections, and I'm surprised it's gone. There's no more opportunity for the student to get, or the applicant to give, an authentic, proving it's them, productive skill, except for maybe when they get to the interview. That's a different part. But so that was a bit of a surprise for me to see that gone. It's still a big test. Shaving 1 hour off I forget how long the GMAT is, 3.5, 4 hour test is still a long test. I certainly wish them well. I know all the people that work with the GMAT test. I've known them for years. Same with MT, I'm sure.
We do.
We'll see where it all lines up. But we're certainly not blind to the fact that they did that, or have we been blind to the fact that our industry has been turned upside down over the past exactly 3 years.
Yeah, it was interesting just to see what they chose to include and not include, and so we were looking forward to hearing what both of you had to say just about the big change. I mean, I would also say that since the GRE, if it is 2010, how many schools are accepting the GRE now? I mean, the majority of schools accept the GRE, like the GMAT. And so, something new and different also winds up getting a little bit more attention, right? And so I wonder if, because the GRE has had a bit more of the market share, if the GMAT was maybe wanting to counter that in some way. So I don't know if it's a business decision or I mean, I don't know. What about looking at schools that are going test optional, which I think is also a response to the COVID world we've been living in, or use of AI? Do you have any comments about either of those aspects of GRE?
Well, I think from the test optional standpoint, it's like Jay said, everything was turned upside down. They're looking at different ways to evaluate candidates. And certainly, even before COVID, there were certain schools, and Lehigh was one of them, where we would waive a standardized test based on, years of work experience, or if someone had a master's degree, or if someone had, we dealt with a lot of STEM individuals coming into the program. So test optional became not so much of a surprise, but then some schools have actually gone back to requiring a test in particular circumstances. Other schools have said, well, we're test optional, but if you want a scholarship, you are going to have to submit some kind of a test. And so those things are out there to think about. The big fear that I always had with test optional was faculty members. How would faculty members feel when you didn't have that standardized test to make an assessment of someone's skills? Because they're the ones who have to deal with, maybe a bimodal class. Some are very strong, some are not very strong. So I think it might be in those schools that did not have a really positive experience with test optional that they've gone back to waivers. For instance, if you want to opt out of the test, then you need to prove to us that you have those skills that are going to make you successful.
I'll add in there, and you you talked about how some of the things may be changing. I don't want to say changing on the GRE necessarily, but changing in assessment and admissions. For years, well over a decade, speaking with my colleagues at other admissions at other business schools, soft skills has constantly been something that's at the front of our mind. So that's something I think you may see more sneaking into some admissions processes. Some schools will say, hey, we interview everyone, so we know about their soft skills. Okay, you've met someone for 30 to 45 minutes, great. If you're the alumni, you're doing interviews, do they do them the exact same way that the school would? So there's a lot of stuff in there, but like that is one of the things, and it's actually one thing that we're working with several schools on right now, both for development reasons. So while you're a student, but also some schools are using it as part of their admissions process as a soft skills assessment. Knowing these are the type of students we want that are dedicated and going to complete the program, or perhaps in the industries we work with, we need people who are very this way or that way, or they want to, balance their class. I mean,
Cohort building, yeah.
Yeah, imagine a class of pure extroverts. I couldn't think of a larger nightmare as an administrator of bringing in 100 MBA students that were all 100% extroverts or introverts.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you want to, there's a number of different things that are on soft skills. That's not the only one. That's just the one that tends to jump out. Everyone thinks about first, but you want a good mix of folks that they're going to learn from each other, build the skills from each other, things like that. So I do say watch for some more of those potential things, which right now GRE, GMAT, none of those are actually assessing. It's really kind of the opinion of the people that you meet going through the admissions process.
I mean, it's how you define leader, right? If you define leader has empathy, looks outside of themselves, how does one assess that in 30 or 40 minutes, right? And so I think that's an interesting space to watch. Overall, how do you define that? Empathy is just such a big word now and thing, especially in the world that we're living in. And so super interesting.
Absolutely.
So I think the only thing that got blown were our minds to see how this particular test can really help someone understand academic readiness and get them into their preferred top programs. So, folks, that's all we have for today's episode. I want to thank my co host, Bara, our guest in the audience, and definitely our featured guest, Jay Bryant and MT today from EDS. It was such a pleasure listening to you both, and we don't know where the time went. So, MBA hopefuls, if you like today's episode, please give us a thumbs up and We would love to hear from you about any questions you might have for us and also topic suggestions. Be sure to subscribe to MBA Waves to stay on top of all the latest trends and news in the world of MBAs, business, and education. Finally, don't forget to check us out next week, same time and same place. And for full access of upcoming and past episodes, head to mbawaves.com. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.